Hello, good morning. So, what I'm going to discuss for this session is a continuation of our strategy implementation. So, this is for organizing and structure. No? So, we have already discussed the global strategy. So, this is now focused on how we are going to organize and structure our implementation of the strategy. Now, strategy implementation is the sum total of the activities and choices required for the execution of a strategic plan. It is the process by which all of those objectives, the strategies, and the policies that we have discussed or that the board has discussed are put into action through the development of programs and tactics, budgets, and procedures. Implementation should be evaluated as a strategy is being formulated, although many companies separate the two. So there's a difference between implementation and evaluation, where implementation is the key part of strategic management, for without implementation we have nothing, no? So strategy formulation and strategy implementation should be considered as the two sides of the same coin, but eventually strategy evaluation will be implemented or will be created to determine the effectiveness of the implementation of the strategy. However, there could be instances that implementation of our strategies could be considered as poor. Okay, so this is normally due to a number of strategic failures. Like for example, merger and acquisition activities are clear types of very visible implementations. Some studies have shown that half of all acquisitions fail to achieve what was expected of them, while recent studies have reported that 83% of companies fail to achieve the goals of a merger. Okay, so this most of the times, no, the mentioned problems reported in post-merger integration were poor communication, unrealistic synergy expectations, structural problems, missing master plans, lost momentum, lack of top management commitment, and an unclear strategic fit. So the implementation process is very important because it also requires strategy makers to consider these questions. Who are the people who will carry out the strategic plan? What must be done to align the company's operations in the new intended direction? And how is everyone going to work together to do what is needed? So these questions and similar ones should have been addressed initially when the pros and cons of strategic alternatives were analyzed. They must also be addressed again before successful implementation plans can be made. Unless top management can answer these basic questions satisfactorily, even the best planned strategy is unlikely to provide the desired outcome. Now, the most likely question that we should consider before we have to implement our strategy is this: who implements the strategy? Depending on how a corporation is organized, those who implement strategy will probably be a much more diverse set of people than those who formulate it. From large multi industry corporations to small entrepreneurial ventures, the reality is that the implementers of strategy are everyone in the organization. Vice presidents of functional areas or department heads and directors of divisions or strategic business units work with their subordinates to put together large scale implementation plans. Plant managers, project managers, and unit heads put together plans for their specific plants, departments, and units. So many of the people in the organization who are most crucial to successful strategy implementation probably had little to do with the development of the corporate and even the business strategy. Therefore, they might be entirely ignorant of the vast amount of data and work that went into the formulation process. Unless changes in mission, objectives, strategies, and policies and their importance to the company are communicated clearly to everyone in the organization, there can be a lot of resistance and foot dragging. So some line managers might hope to influence top management into abandoning its new plans and returning to its old ways. This is one of the reasons why involving people from all organizational levels in the formulation and implementation of strategy tends to result in better organizational performance. Now, what must be done? These managers of divisions and functional areas work with their fellow managers to develop programs, budgets, and procedures for the implementation of strategy. They also work to achieve synergy among the divisions and functional areas in order to establish and maintain a company's distinctive competence. Now, strategy implementation involves establishing programs and tactics to create a series of new organizational activities, budgets to allocate funds to the new activities, and also procedures to handle the day to day details. The purpose of a program or a tactic is to make a strategy action oriented. In practice, a program is a collection of tactics, and a tactic is the individual action plan taken by the organization as an element of the effort to accomplish the plan. For example, when Xerox Corporation undertook a turnaround strategy, it needed to significantly reduce its costs and expenses. Thus, that time, management of Xerox Corporation introduced the Lean Six Sigma. This program was developed to identify and improve a poorly performing process. So, what did Xerox do? Xerox first trained its top executives in the program and then launched around 250 individual Six Sigma projects throughout the corporation. The result was a 6 million US dollars in savings in 1 year, with even more expected the next years. Now, most corporate headquarters have around 10 to 30 programs in effect at any one time, no? Thus, uh, the use of the Lean Six Sigma can be an effective tool in as part of the programs and tactics of these organizations who want to implement their strategies. Studies of decision making report that half the decisions made in organizations fail because of poor tactics. Remember that a tactic is a specific operating plan that details how a strategy is to be implemented in terms of when and where it is to be put into action. By their nature, tactics are narrower in scope and shorter in time horizon than our strategies. Tactics, therefore, may be viewed like policies as a link between the formulation and implementation of strategy. Some of the tactics available to implement competitive strategies are timing tactics and market location tactics. Now, what is a timing tactic? A timing tactic deals with when a company implements a strategy. So the first company to manufacture and sell a new product or service is called the first mover or the pioneer. Some of the advantages of being a first mover are that the company is able to establish a reputation as an industry leader, move down the learning curve to assume the cost leadership position, and earn temporarily high profits from buyers who value the product or service very highly. Now, a successful first mover can also set the standard for all subsequent products in the industry. A company that sets the standard locks in customers and is then able to further offer products based on that standard. Now, being a first mover, that, however, has its also disadvantages. These disadvantages can be conversely advantages enjoyed by the late movers. So who are these late movers? These late movers are those who imitate the technological advances of others and thus keep their R&D costs low. Okay, they also keep risks down by waiting until a new technological standard or market is established and take advantage of the first movers' natural inclination to ignore market segments. So this means that as pioneers or first movers select their own markets, these late movers are actually looking at the market and determine Who among the market segments are being ignored by the first movers? And then these are considered as the market now of the late movers. Research indicates that successful late movers tend to be large firms with considerable resources and related experience. Example is Microsoft. Okay, so once Netscape had established itself as the standard for internet browsers in the 1990s, Microsoft used its huge resources to directly attack Netscape's position with its Internet Explorer. It did not want Netscape to also set the standard in the developing and highly lucrative internet market inside corporations. So by 2004, Microsoft's Internet Explorer dominated web browsers, and Netscape was only a minor presence. Nevertheless, research suggests that the advantages and disadvantages of first and late movers may not always generalize across industries because of differences in entry barriers and the resources of the specific competitors. Another tactic that strategic managers should also consider is the market location tactic. It deals with where a company implements a strategy. A company or business unit can implement a competitive strategy either offensively or defensively. An offensive tactic usually takes place in the firm's own current an offensive tactic usually takes place in an established competitor's market location. A defensive tactic, on the other hand, usually takes place in the firm's own current market position as a defense against possible attack by a rival. Offensive tactics. Some of the methods used to attack a competitor's position are under the offensive tactics, we have frontal assault, flanking maneuver, bypass attack, encirclement, and the guerrilla warfare. So, what do we mean by all of these tactics? Frontal assault happens when the attacking firm goes head to head with its competitor. It matches the competitor in every category from price to promotion to distribution channel. To be successful, the attacker must have not only superior resources, but also the willingness to persevere. This is generally a very expensive tactic and may serve to awaken a sleeping giant, depressing profits for the whole industry. Flanking maneuver is when, rather than going straight for a competitor's position of strength with a frontal assault, a firm may attack a part of the market where the competitor is weak. Okay? Another one is the bypass attack. Rather than directly attacking the established competitor frontally or on its flanks, a company or business unit may choose to change the rules of the game. This tactic attempts to cut the market out from under the established defender by offering a new type of product that makes the competitor's product unnecessary. Encirclement happens when usually evolving out of a frontal assault or flanking maneuver. It occurs as an attacking company or unit encircles the competitor's position in terms of products or markets or both. The encircler has greater product variety, like for example, a complete product line ranging from low to high price, and or serves more markets. Like it also dominates the every secondary market. The last offensive tactic is the guerrilla warfare. Instead of a continual and extensive resource expense attack on a competitor, a firm or business unit may choose to hit and run. Guerrilla warfare is characterized by the use of small, intermittent assaults on different market segments held by the competitor. In this way, a new entrant or small firm can make some gains without seriously threatening a large established competitor and evoking some form of retaliation. To be successful, the firm or unit conducting guerrilla warfare must be patient enough to accept small gains and avoid pushing the established competitor to the point that it must respond or else lose face. On the other hand, aside from these offensive tactics, we also have the defensive tactics, which include raising structural barriers, increasing expected retaliation, and lowering the inducement for attack. According to Porter, defensive tactics aim to lower the probability of attack, divert attacks to less threatening events, or lessen the intensity of an attack. Instead of increasing competitive advantage per se, they make a company's or business unit's competitive advantage more sustainable by causing a challenger to conclude that an attack is unattractive. So these tactics deliberately reduce short-term profitability to ensure long-term profitability. Now, what does raising structural barriers mean? Entry barriers, in this case, act to block a challenger's logical avenues of attack. Some of the most important, according to Porter, are to offer a full line of products in every market segment to close off any entry points, block channel access by signing exclusive agreements with distributors, raise power buyer switching for costs by offering low-cost training to users, raise the cost of gaining trial users by keeping prices low on items new users are most likely to purchase, increase scale economies to reduce unit costs, foreclose alternative technologies through patenting or licensing, limit outside access to facilities and personnel, tie up suppliers by obtaining exclusive contracts or purchasing key locations, avoid suppliers that also serve competitors, and encourage the government to raise barriers such as safety and pollution standards or favorable trade policies. The second defensive tactic is any action that increases the perceived threat of retaliation for an attack. For example, management may strongly defend any erosion of market share by drastically cutting prices or matching a challenger's promotion through a policy of accepting any price reduction coupons for a competitor's product. So this counterattack is especially important in markets that are very important to the defending company or business unit. The third defensive tactic is a tactic that is conducted to reduce a challenger's expectations of future profits in the industry. So with prices kept very low, there is little profit incentive for new entrants. Now, aside from these different tactics, strategic implementers should also consider the budgets and procedures. After programs and tactical plans have been developed, the budget process begins. So, planning a budget is the last real check a corporation has on the feasibility of its selected strategy. An ideal strategy might be found to be completely impractical only after specific implementation programs and tactics are costed in detail. Another one is the procedure. After the divisional and corporate budgets are approved, procedures must be developed. Usually, we call these procedures as SOPs, or the Standard Operating Procedures. They typically detail the various activities that must be carried out to complete a corporation's programs and tactical plans. Also known as organizational routines, procedures are the primary means by which organizations accomplish what or how much they should do. Now, once in place, procedures must be updated to reflect any changes in technology as well as in strategy. Now, if we are going to implement our programs or our strategies with the different procedures, it is also important that we achieve synergy. One of the goals to be achieved in synergy implementation or strategy implementation is that there should be synergy between and among functions and business units. So you wouldn't want your different departments arguing over a certain project or over a certain policy, no? So what you wanted to do or what you want to have as a strategy implementer is that all of the different department heads of the different functions and business units agree and have a common understanding of what will happen. So this is the reason corporations commonly reorganize after an acquisition. Synergy is said to exist for a divisional corporation if the ROI of each division is greater than what the return would be if each division were an independent business. According to Gould and Campbell, synergy can take place in one of six forms: shared know how, coordinated strategies, shared tangible resources, economies of scale or scope, pooled negotiating power, and new business creation. Combined units often benefit from sharing knowledge or skills. This is a leveraging of core competencies. Okay, so one reason that Procter& Gamble purchased Gillette was to combine Procter& Gamble's knowledge of the female consumer with Gillette's knowledge of the male consumer. Now, also, aligning the business strategies of two or more business units may give a corporation significant advantage by reducing inter-unit competition and developing a coordinated strategy or response to common competitors. This could be seen in the merger between Comcast and NBC Universal in 2011, which gave the combined company significant bargaining strength and flexibility with advertisers in the increasingly competitive television media industry. Now, also, combined units can sometimes save money by sharing resources, such as a common manufacturing facility or a research and development laboratory. These big pharmaceutical companies in the world are actually looking for savings with the big mergers in the industry. Like, for example, we have mergers of Pfizer and Wyeth, Novartis and Alcon, and Roche and Genentech. Coordinating the flow of products or services of one unit with that of another unit can also reduce inventory, increase capacity utilization, and improve market access. Also, units can combine their volume of purchasing to gain bargaining power over common suppliers to reduce costs and improve quality. The same can be done with common distributors. So the acquisitions of Macy's and the May Company enabled Federated Department Stores, which changed its name to Macy's, to gain purchasing economies for sales of its stores. Exchanging knowledge and skills can also facilitate new products or services by extracting discrete activities from various units and combining them in a new unit, or by establishing joint ventures among internal business units. Google has acquired more than 100 companies over the past few years. Now, a more interesting question would be, how is strategy to be implemented? Before plans can lead to actual performance, a corporation should be organized to take advantage of its competitive advantages. Programs should be adequately staffed, and activities should be directed toward achieving desired objectives. Any change in corporate strategy is very likely to require some sort of change in the way an organization is structured and in the kind of skills needed in particular positions. Managers must therefore closely examine the way their company is structured in order to decide what, if any, changes should be made in the way work is accomplished. Should activities be grouped differently? Should the authority to make decisions be centralized at headquarters or decentralized to managers in distant locations? Should a company be managed like a tight ship with many rules and controls, or loosely with few rules and controls? Should a corporation be organized into a tall structure with many layers of managers, each having a narrow span of control to better control his or her subordinates, or should it be organized into a flat structure with few layers of managers, each having a wide span of control to give more freedom to his or her subordinates? So, usually, these are the questions that should be answered in determining how we are going to implement these strategies. Now, in a classic study of large US corporations such as DuPont, General Motors, Sears, and Standard Oil, Alfred Chandler concluded the structure follows strategy. That is, changes in corporate strategy lead to changes in organizational structure. He also concluded that organizations follow a pattern of development from one kind of structural arrangement to another as they expand. According to Chandler, these structural changes occur because the old structure, having been pushed too far, has caused inefficiencies that have become too obviously detrimental to bear. Therefore, Chandler proposed the following as the sequence of what occurs. Number one, new strategy is created. It should be followed by new administrative problems that emerge, then economic performance declines, then new appropriate structure is created, then we do economic performance. Okay, as performance or economic performance rises. Chandler found that in their early years, corporations such as DuPont tend to have a centralized functional organizational structure that is well suited to producing and selling a limited range of products. As they add new product lines, purchase their own sources of supply, and create their own distribution networks, they become too complex for highly centralized structures. So, to remain successful, this type of organization needs to shift to a decentralized structure with several semi autonomous divisions. Successful large conglomerate organizations have tended to follow a pattern of structural development as they grow and expand. Beginning with the simple structure of the entrepreneurial firm, these organizations tend to get larger and organize along functional lines with marketing, production, and finance departments. So, with continuing success, the company adds new product lines in different industries and organizes itself into interconnected divisions. Now, the differences among these three structural stages of corporate development in terms of typical problems, objectives, strategies, reward systems, and other characteristics should be considered by the strategy implementer. Now, the first stage, or the stage one, is the simple structure. Stage one is typified by the intrapreneurial, or a small team who founds a company to promote an idea. The entrepreneur or team tends to make all the important decisions and is involved in every detail and phase of the organization. The stage one company has little formal structure, which allows the entrepreneur or team to directly supervise the activities of every employee. Planning is usually short range or reactive. The typical managerial functions of planning, organizing, directing, staffing, and controlling are usually performed to a very limited degree, if at all. The greatest strengths of a stage one or corporation are its flexibility and dynamism. Okay? The drive entrepreneur energizes the organization in its struggle for growth. Its greatest weakness, on the other hand, is its extreme reliance on the entrepreneur to decide general strategies as well as detailed procedures. If the entrepreneur falters, the company usually flounders. So this is labeled by Grainer as crisis of leadership. Stage two, or the functional structure, is the point at which the entrepreneur is replaced by a team of managers of functional specializations. The transition to this stage requires substantial managerial style change for the chief officer of the company, especially if he or she was the stage one entrepreneur. He or she must learn to delegate, otherwise, having additional staff members yields no benefits to the organization. By concentrating on one industry, while that industry remains attractive, a stage two company can be very successful. Now, once a functionally structured firm diversifies into other products in different industries, however, the advantages of the functional structure break down. A crisis of autonomy can now develop in which people managing diversified product lines need more decision making freedom than top management is willing to delegate to them. The company needs to move now to a different structure. The stage three, or the divisional structure, is typified by the corporations managing diverse product lines in numerous industries. It decentralizes the decision making authority. Stage three organizations grow by diversifying their product lines and expanding to cover wider geographical areas. They move to divisional structure with a central headquarters and decentralized operating divisions. With each division or business unit a functionally organized stage two company. They may also use a conglomerate structure if top management chooses to keep its collection of stage two subsidiaries operating autonomously. Now, another crisis that can be considered in this type of stage is the crisis of control. It can develop in which the various units act to optimize their own sales and profits without regard to the overall corporation, whose headquarters seems far away and almost irrelevant in the operations. Over time, divisions have been evolving into SBUs to better reflect product market conditions. So, even with the evolution of these different structures into SBUs, During the 1970s and 1980s, the divisional structure is not the last word in organizational structure. The use of SBUs may result in a red tape crisis, in which the corporation has grown too large and complex to be managed through formal programs, and rigid systems and procedures take precedence over problem solving. No, the matrix, no, and the network are two possible candidates for a fourth stage in corporate development, a stage that not only emphasizes horizontal over vertical connections between people and groups, but also organizes work around temporary projects in which sophisticated information systems support collaborative activities. Corporations often find themselves in difficulty because they are blocked from moving into the next logical stage of the development. And this is usually one of the problems, no? If you are changing from one structure or stage to another. Blocks development may be internal, such as lack of resources, lack of ability, or refusal of top management to delegate decision making to others. Or it could also be external, like the economic conditions, labor shortages, or the lack of market growth. Entrepreneurs who start businesses generally have four tendencies that work very well for small new ventures, but become an Achilles heels for these same individuals when they try to manage a larger firm with diverse needs, departments, priorities, and constituencies. These include loyalty to comrades, task oriented, single mindedness, and working in isolation. Loyalty to comrades, this is good at the beginning, but soon becomes a liability because this will be seen as favoritism. Task oriented, focusing on the job is critical at first, but then becomes excessive attention to detail. Single mindedness, a grand vision is needed to introduce a new product, but can become tunnel vision as a company grows into more markets and products. Meaning, it would be very difficult now to see the light. That's why it's called tunnel vision. It's more difficult to see the light, it's more difficult to achieve the vision because of these growing markets and products. And working in isolation, this is good for a brilliant scientist, but disastrous for a CEO with multiple constituencies. This difficulty in moving to a new stage is compounded by the founder's tendency to maneuver around the need to delegate by carefully hiring, training, and grooming his or her own team of members. The team tends to maintain the founder's influence throughout the organization long after the founder is gone. Now, instead of considering stages of development in terms of structure, the organizational life cycle approach places the primary emphasis on the dominant issue facing the corporation. Organizational structure becomes a secondary concern. The organizational life cycle describes how organizations grow, develop, and eventually decline. It is the organizational equivalent of the product life cycle in marketing. These stages are birth, stage 1, growth, stage 2, maturity, stage 3, decline, stage 4, and death. That's the stage 5. Note that the first three stages of the organizational life cycles are similar to the three commonly accepted stages of corporate development. The only significant difference is the addition of the decline and death stages to complete the cycle. Even though a company's strategy may still be sound, its aging structure, culture, and processes may be such that they prevent the strategy from being executed properly. Its core competencies become core rigidities that are no longer able to adapt to changing conditions. That thus the company in this case encounters or moves into the next stage, which is the decline. So movement from growth to maturity to decline and finally to death is not, however, inevitable. A revival phase may occur sometime during the maturity or decline stages. The corporation's life cycle can be extended by managerial and product innovations, developing new combinations of existing resources to introduce new products or acquiring new resources through acquisitions can enable firms with declining performance to regain growth, so long as the action is valuable and difficult to imitate. Now, the basic structures that we have just discussed, that we have discussed also in the past few weeks, like the simple functional division and conglomerate, these are actually summarized under the first three stages of corporate development. A new strategy may require more flexible characteristics than the traditional functional or divisional structure can offer. Today's business organizations are becoming less centralized with the greater use of cross-functional work teams. Although many variations in hybrid structures exist, two forms stand out: the matrix structure and the network structure. Most organizations find that organizing around either in the functional structure or products in geography provides an appropriate organizational structure. The matrix structure, in contrast, may be very appropriate when organizations conclude that neither functional nor divisional forms, even when combined with horizontal linking mechanisms such as SBUs, are right for their situations. Now, in matrix structures, functional and product forms are combined simultaneously at the same level of organizations. Now, in this type of structure, employees have two superiors: a product or project manager and a functional manager. The home department, that is, engineering, manufacturing, or sales, is usually functional and is reasonably permanent. People from these functional units are often assigned temporarily to one or more product units or projects. The product units or projects are usually temporary and act like divisions in that they are differentiated on a product market basis. Okay, so pioneered, actually this was pioneered in the aerospace industry. The matrix structure was developed to combine the ability or stability of the functional structure with the flexibility of the product form. The matrix structure is very useful when the external environment, especially its technological and market aspects, is very complex and changeable. It does, however, produce conflicts revolving around duties, authority, and resource allocation. To the extent that the goals to be achieved are vague and the technology used is poorly understood, a continuous battle for power between product and functional managers is likely. So, the matrix structure is often found in an organization or SBU when the following three conditions exist. Number one, ideas need to be cross-fertilized across projects or products. Resources are scarce, and abilities to process information and to make decisions need to be improved. Now, under this matrix structure, there are three distinct phases now, no, that exist in the development. First, we have temporary cross-functional task forces, product brand management, and mature matrix. The temporary cross-functional task forces are initially used when a new product line is being introduced. A project manager is in charge as the key horizontal link. For product and brand manager, if the cross-functional task forces become more permanent, the project manager becomes a product or brand manager and the second phase begins. In this arrangement, function is still the primary organizational structure, but product or brand managers act as the integrators of semi-permanent products or brands. The third and final phase of matrix development involves a true dual authority structure, the mature matrix. Both the functional and product structures are permanent. All employees are connected to both a vertical functional superior and a horizontal product manager. Functional and product managers have equal authority and must work well together to resolve disagreements over resources and priorities. Now, a somewhat more radical organizational design, the network structure is an example of what could be termed as a non-structure based of its virtual elimination of in-house business functions. Many activities are outsourced. A corporation organized in this manner is often called a virtual organization because it is composed of a series of project groups or collaborations linked by constantly changing non-hierarchical cobweb-like electronic networks. The network structure has been enabled by rapid development of internet-based tools that allow collaboration without physical presence. Rather than satisfying a company's needs with locally available people or paying to relocate people, more and more companies utilize a network structure to get the best and brightest. This structure is also quite useful when the environment of a firm is unstable and is expected to remain so. Now, under these conditions, there is usually a strong need for innovation and quick response. Instead of having salaried employees, the company may contract with people for a specific project or length of time. Some authorities in the field propose that the evolution of organizational forms is leading from the matrix and the network to the cellular, also called the modular organizational form. According to Miles Snow, a cellular modular organization is composed of cells, meaning self-managing teams, autonomous business units, etc., which can operate alone, but which can interact with other cells to produce a more potent and competent business mechanism. This combination of independence and interdependence allows the cellular or modular organizational form to generate and share the knowledge and expertise needed to produce continuous innovation. The cellular modular form includes the dispersed entrepreneurship of the divisional structure, customer responsiveness of the matrix, and self-organizing knowledge and asset sharing of the network. Okay, so the impetus for such a new structure is the pressure of a continuous process of innovation in all industries. Each cell or media module has an entrepreneurial responsibility to the large organization. Beyond knowledge creation and sharing, the cellular or modular form adds value by keeping the firm's total knowledge assets more fully in use than any other type of structure. It is beginning to appear in firms that are focused on rapid product and service innovation, providing unique or state-of-the-art offerings in industries such as automobile manufacture, bicycle production, consumer electronics, household appliances, power tools, computing products, and software. Another thing that we need to consider and to align are re-engineering and strategy implementation. Re-engineering is the radical redesign of business processes to achieve major gains in cost, service, or time. It is not in itself a type of structure, but it is an effective program to implement a turnaround strategy. Business process reengineering strives to break away from the old rules and procedures that develop and become ingrained in every organization over the years. They may be a combination of policies, rules, and procedures that have never been seriously questioned because they were established years earlier. So these may range from credit decisions are made by the credit department or to local inventory is needed for good customer service. These rules of organization and work design may have been based on assumptions about technology, people, and organizational goals that may no longer be relevant nowadays. Okay? Hammer, who popularized the concept of reengineering, suggests the following principles of reengineering. Organize around outcomes, not tasks. So meaning, design a person's or a department's job around an objective or outcome instead of a single task or series of tasks. Have those who use the output of the process perform the process. So with computer-based information systems, processes can now be re-engineered so that the people who need the result of the process can do it themselves. Subsume information processing work into the real work that produces the information. People or departments that produce information can also process it for use instead of just sending raw data to others in the organization to interpret. Treat geographically dispersed resources as though they were centralized. With modern information systems, companies can provide flexible service locally while keeping the actual resources in a centralized location for coordination purposes. Also, we have to link parallel activities instead of integrating the results. Instead of having separate units perform different activities that must eventually come together, have them communicate while they work so they can do the integrating. Next, put the decision point where the work is performed and build into the process. The people who do the work should make the decisions and be self-controlling. Lastly, capture information once and at the source. Instead of having each unit develop its own database and information processing activities, why not put the information into one network so that all can access the information whenever they needed the information. Okay, so studies of the performance of re-engineering programs show mixed results. Several companies have had success with business re-engineering. On the other hand, there are also studies showing that re-engineering is not that an assurance of creating, a more sustainable, increasing productivity, or reducing the costs for the company. So from here, we can also use the Lean Six Sigma, to determine if and to fully implement our strategies. So originally, the Lean Six Sigma is conceived by Motorola as a quality improvement program in the mid 1980s. Six Sigma has become a cost-saving program for all types of manufacturers. Not Sigma, but Six Sigma. Briefly, Six Sigma is an analytical method for achieving near-perfect results on a production line. Analytical method. Actually, this involves also statistical computations. That's why we arrived at Six Sigma. Okay, so this is more of a statistical function out of a mathematical analysis or computation. Although the emphasis is on reducing product variance for all types of manufacturers, briefly, Six Sigma is an analytical method for achieving near perfect results on a production line. Although the emphasis is on reducing product variance in order to boost quality and efficiency, it is increasingly being applied to accounts receivable, sales, and R&D. Now, in statistics, the Greek letter sigma denotes variation in the standard bell-shaped curve. So 1 sigma equals 690,000 defects per million. So most companies are able to achieve only 3 sigma, or 66,000 defects per million. Six Sigma reduces the defects to only 3.4 defects per million, thus saving money by preventing this waste. This is also the reason why this is called Six Sigma, that for every 1 million, there is a reduction of the defects to 3.4. Okay? So the process of Six Sigma encompasses 5 steps. So again, Six Sigma is not pertaining to the number of steps, but it's more of the number of defects that are being reduced. So what are the steps of Six Sigma? We have define, measure, analyze, improve, and establish. Define. Define a process where results are poorer than average. Measure the process to determine exact current performance. Analyze the information to pinpoint where things are going wrong. Improve the process and eliminate the error. Establish controls to prevent future defects from occurring. Okay, so savings attributed to Six Sigma programs have ranged from 1.2% to 4.5% of annual revenue for a number of Fortune 500 firms. And that's actually a big percentage, no? If you're going to multiply that to billions of dollars. Firms that have successfully employed Six Sigma include General Electric, Allied Signal, ABB, and Ford Motor Company. The newer version of the Six Sigma is the Lean Six Sigma. It is becoming increasingly popular in companies. So this incorporates the statistical approach of Six Sigma with the Lean Manufacturing Program, originally developed by Toyota. So like re-engineering, it includes the removal of the necessary steps in any process and fixing those that remain. So this is the Lean addition to the Six Sigma. Organizing a company's activities and people to implement strategy involves more than simply redesigning a corporation's overall structure. It also involves redesigning the way jobs are done. So with increasing emphasis on re-engineering, many companies are beginning to rethink their work processes with an eye toward phasing unnecessary people and activities out of the process. So process steps that have traditionally been performed sequentially can be improved by performing them concurrently using cross-functional work teams. So restructuring through needing fewer people requires broadening the scope of jobs and encouraging teamwork. The design of jobs and subsequent job performance are therefore increasingly being considered as sources of competitive advantage. Now, job design refers to the study of individual tasks in an attempt to make them more relevant to the company and to the employees. So to minimize some of the adverse consequences of task specialization, corporations have turned to new job design techniques. No? We have job enlargement, which combines tasks to give a worker more of the same type of duties to perform. Job rotation, moving workers through several jobs to increase variety. Job characteristics, using task characteristics to improve employee motivation. And job enrichment. This is altering the jobs by giving the worker more autonomy and control over activities. Although each of these methods has its adherents, no one method seems to work in all situations. So a basic dilemma a multinational corporation faces is how to organize authority centrally. So it operates as a vast interlocking system that achieves synergy and at the same time decentralize authority so that local managers can make the decisions necessary to meet the demands of the local market or host government. So to deal with this problem, multinational corporations tend to structure themselves either along product groups or geographic areas. Okay, so they may even combine both in matrix structure. For example, the design chosen by 3M Corporation, Philips, Asia, Brown, Boveri, among others. So one side of the 3M's matrix represents the company's product divisions. The other side includes the company's international country and regional subsidiaries. Two examples of the usual international structure are Nestle and American Cyanamid. Nestle's structure is one in which significant power and authority have been decentralized to geographic entities. In contrast, American Cyanamid has a series of centralized product groups with worldwide responsibilities. So the product group structure of American Cyanamid enables the company to introduce and manage a similar line of products around the world. This enables the corporation to centralize decision making along product lines and to reduce costs. On the other hand, the geographical area structure of Nestle allows the company to tailor products to regional differences and to achieve regional coordination. For instance, Nestle markets 200 different varieties of its instant coffee, Nescafe. The geographic area structure decentralizes the decision making to the local subsidiaries. So, as industries move from being multi domestic to being more globally integrated, multinational corporations are increasingly switching from the geographic area to the product group structure. For example, Nestle found that its decentralized area structure had become increasingly inefficient. As a result, operating margins at Nestle have trailed those at rivals Unilever, Group, Danone, and Kraft Foods by as much as 50%. So what happened? The CEO acted to eliminate country-by-country responsibilities for many functions. In one instance, he established 5 centers worldwide to handle most coffee and cocoa purchasing. Now, simultaneous pressures for decentralization to be locally responsive and centralization to be maximally efficient are causing the interesting structural adjustments in most large corporations. So this is what we meant by the phrase, think globally, act locally. Companies are attempting to decentralize those operations that are culturally oriented and closest to the customers, manufacturing, marketing, and human resources. At the same time, the companies are also consolidating less visible internal functions such as research and development, finance, and information systems, where there can be significant economies of scale. Strategy implementation, on a final note, is where the rubber hits the road. Environmental scanning and the strategy formulation are crucial to the strategic management, but are only the beginning of the process. The failure to carry a strategic plan into the day to day operations of the workplace is a major reason why strategic planning often fails to achieve its objectives. For a strategy to be successfully implemented, it must be made action oriented. So, this is done through a series of programs that are funded through specific budgets and contain new detailed procedures. So, this ends our session for this morning regarding strategy implementation that focus on organizing and structure. Thank you.